you have an agenda? You have an agenda, okay.
I had that.
Just want to look at this one.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the regular stated meeting of the Yarmouth Conservation Commission. This is the meeting for Thursday, August 3rd, 2023. This is to formally advise that, as required by General Laws, Chapter 38, Sections 18 through 25, and pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, signed into law on June 16, 2021, as extended by Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023. The Yarmouth Conservation Commission will hold a public meeting at the date and time noted above. The public is welcome to attend either in person or via the alternative public access provided by the notice meeting available on the Town of Yarmouth website. And this is the meeting of the Yarmouth Conservation Commission for Thursday, August 3rd, 2023. We'll get into the first order of business, which is a discussion with Town of Yarmouth DPW and Recreation staff regarding Seagull Beach raking. Thank you,
Good
Jeff,
evening.
for coming in.
Yes, Jeff Colby, Public Works Director. Happy
Okay.
to talk about this issue.
Okay.
Do you want me to give an overview?
If you would, please.
Sure. So every year at Seagull Beach, the Conservation Commission has issued a beach maintenance plan that they revise every spring for the following summer. And this outlines the raking protocols and other beach management activities that are allowed to take place on the beach. This year, in the midsummer, the areas that are usually sectioned off to protect the shorebird nesting habitat have become colonized with dune vegetation in the previously approved areas for raking. And so the commission would like to revisit the plan for the rest of the summer to make sure that all the departments are on the same page regarding raking, the vegetation, and the open beach area.
Okay, thank you.
In this area, the area it's mostly focused on is right here, a large colony, and in this area here. This area remains open. Those are the two major areas where the plants are now located.
Okay. Has everybody been out to take a look? Okay, did anybody have any specific questions or comments before we?
It'll stabilize the dune more is my only observation.
Yeah, the commission previously, when we discussed it a bit more informally, had the intention of allowing the vegetation to remain undisturbed for the rest of the season and to think about not allowing raking to continue for the rest of the flat beach area. But it is a concern of DPW and Recreation that they would like to continue raking in the flat areas while also avoiding the vegetation. And I think that would be a good compromise while we can have more time to prepare an official permit for the following seasons.
It seemed that the two areas that when we went on Monday with Brittany, aren't here. Well, one is roped off still, and the other was roped off to about a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, that's correct.
And I was there today also on my daily walk, and not very many people, I couldn't see any tracks of people walking through the area, so I think we should leave those alone and let them grow.
You're talking about the one on the right side as you come walking out the walk.
Boardwalk on the right, and then
That's what
this
this is
roped off
directly.
area on the
There was
left.
actually, I was there this afternoon, and there was actually somebody lying in the in the middle of the one on the right.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, I'm there at
but I
6 in
think-
the morning, not a lot of people there.
I mean, I think you could certainly, a compromise would be to take at least half of that and let that continue to grow.
Yeah, I think we did have a staff meeting on site, and I think that's what we were thinking about doing as well.
So that area, and then the other area, I guess my only other concern I don't know, maybe you can help me with this one. There were clearly some sort of a machine out on the beach sometime earlier today, I would have assumed, maybe this morning sometime, that had run over a couple patches of the vegetation there. very near the, right, just a little bit to the right of where your cursor is now. But I don't know what it was. It looked
It was
like
there,
a
those
small
marks
4
were
tracks.
there on, when we were there, and the person who does the beach raking said that was him, and it was an accident. It was from the raking that happened on Monday,
Oh, so we've already done one raking on Monday,
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
I was there when they were raking Tuesday, just coincidentally.
Okay, I mean, I noticed, I mean, there is no doubt, are you gonna continue down, is the idea that you're gonna continue down the beach to the east as well? Is that what you like to do, where the heavy concentration of shells in the area above the berm crest?
Yeah, I'd say where there's a heavy access by people, you really kind of both to the, on both sides of the lifeguard towers that are there, if you will, kind of the heavy area, used area, if you will, really is just to, fill in the holes, pick up the debris and trash that people leave. There is no lifeguards, unfortunately, this season there. There are people that, do enjoy the beach and dig large holes, and we'd like to be able to fill those in. We think they're a concern for both people as well as animals and that type of thing. But certainly, we're happy to avoid whatever vegetation the commission feels is appropriate to preserve. We just want to provide a balance between the recreation of the facility, but also the environment as well. So we think we met with Brittany out there earlier, as she mentioned, and I think she has a great understanding of the various needs out there, and we're happy to do what the commission would like, and suggest that working through Brittany is a great resource to make that happen.
And I was just going over with the people who do the raking at DPW. They tend to turn around by this fourth lifeguard chair. There's no space to turn around after that. So they don't rake any of the beach afterward, more east of this chair, because there's no space to turn the machine around. So they stop here.
They can't turn the machine down by the breakwater or by the jetty?
He said there's not enough space.
Enough room.
It's a tractor that
Yeah.
tows this, fairly large structure that does a great job in what it does, but it doesn't have very good turning radius.
I've seen it work.
Yeah.
Well, I guess this isn't really an issue for discussion right now, but I mean, I thought that was one of the reasons why everybody wanted to have the beach raking going on. But I mean, I'm fine if we cut back on about half the area to the right of the boardwalk, and then the same issue again. I guess I don't have an issue as long as they stay above the berm crest and wherever there is. Well, I guess that was my other question too. Are you planning on speaking with Audubon to keep the posts up, or are we going to put new posts up so that?
That would be one easy way to mark this area over here where the fencing is still up, to ask them to just keep it up. They were going to leave it up until the end of August anyway. But the place where they took the fencing down is over here where the most of the vegetation currently is. And I think the easiest way to demarcate it would for us to be to put something back up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, but are we going to do that, or?
We could do it.
Okay. So I would say,
Do it.
yeah,
And just to
the-
mark off all the area with vegetation in that area, or some sort of,
Why?
Say all area. I mean, it's not that big, and there's still plenty of beach. And it's been marked off for most of the season. Didn't seem to affect people.
yeah, sorry, I don't have a better picture of that area. Oh, this is that area.
yeah, so I would,
That area.
Hmm.
Where the majority of the plants are, where these little tufts are. Are you okay with them raking in there?
yeah, I mean, up to the,
I don't see how correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, but if you go in where the boardwalk is, there's no place for him to turn around there either, right? If we were to,
Right,
Off.
you're correct. We certainly want to balance the needs of the users and the vegetation there, but you're absolutely right. In to the left of the boardwalk, as you're seeing here, it would be very difficult to do a portion of that just because of the way the machine doesn't turn very well. But I think
Okay.
if we were to mark it out as Brittany's suggesting, to maybe preserve the more mature vegetation, if you will, and if you can't get in there, we just don't go in there either. But at least we have a guideline as far as, how far we can go and what can be cleaned.
I think that's good.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I mean, as long as if you're willing to just have some means of demarcation, like 2x2 posts or something that you just, sledgehammer into the ground.
I can do that. And the other portion of this conversation is that we would be working to put together a permit for the raking this winter for the following seasons, and we can hash out a more exact boundary for our future raking and management.
I mean, I would suggest that you try and get that filed by maybe the end of November.
Oh, okay.
What were you going to say?
I said January, but that gives you more time. I'm just not sure we can put it together that fast, but
How much time would you like? I'm just, the only, because
Side
I'm just saying,
plans.
we're looking at 3 months between, if you wait until after January, then you're looking at 3 months before they're going to want to come out and do their raking, and then they've only got,
yeah, November, end of November,
They don't have a lot
December
of time
would be
to-
more realistic timeline. We
And
just have to
that's-
get Amanda, like the engineer, and everybody on the same page, and obviously I would be more than happy helping with these
yeah,
applications.
we're just, I mean, like I said, I'm just trying to give them, because
Mm-hmm.
with the idea that natural heritage is not known for their
Timeliness, yeah.
speedy review, so it just gives you more time to get everything worked out. But if you, I mean, you'd have to take the time that you need to take the time to get the
Yeah.
file done, so.
True. We'll take that into account. And as of now, as I'm aware, the seaweed issue has diminished significantly, right? From,
We're getting less complaints, yes.
yeah, I think it is much better off. I walked all the way down on Tuesday, and there was not a ton accumulated anymore. So that's good news.
Anybody else?
I agree.
Excellent idea.
Paul?
Yep. I appreciate that everybody got together to talk about this, because it seems to me one of the difficulties was that, in a way, the left hand didn't know what the right was doing as far as the beach was concerned, and so maybe this is the beginning of better communication between the entities that take care of the beach and the Conservation Commission, so that there aren't misunderstandings about what needs to be raked and what shouldn't be raked and all the other, and I think the other activities that are gonna take place might define those things a little bit better, but I would encourage, again, the entities that take care of the beach to make sure that they communicate once in a while. And, last meeting, it seemed like folks weren't talking to each other, so now I'm glad that it seems that everybody is, so I do appreciate that. Okay.
Is there a reason why they weren't doing lifeguards this year?
It's a staffing issue. Certainly, this is a priority beach in the overall plan, and Anthony, our recreation director, would be better one to speak to that, but just very limited staff, and he's been spreading those around the best he can, but that's just a site he's not been able to cover.
Yeah.
And
I
plenty
mean,
of other
only it's
beaches
because
as well.
they are a valuable resource at that time of year for
Even,
at least trying to keep major issues in terms of litter and that sort of thing from getting out of hand, but.
Absolutely. I would certainly prefer to have people here, and I think he would as well. It's just a matter of we don't have the people to do that.
Okay. All right, so we'll see you, as soon as you can get your notice in, we'll see you back here again, and we'll have a more detailed discussion on where we go from there then. Anybody else, last comments or anything?
I'll follow up with you and Roby and Kevin about what we talked about, and I'll try and get the fencing in early next week.
Okay, Kevin probably can give you a hand with that too, so.
Great.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Jeff.
Jeff. All right, next order of business, a request for determination of applicability. The first one is for Daniel Kennedy, 225 Route 28. Proposed construction of electric vehicle chargers in riverfront area, land subject to coastal storm flowage, and the buffer zone to a salt marsh. Is any representative here?
Daniel Kennedy?
Daniel Kennedy?
He's on the
Oh.
Zoom.
He is on Zoom.
All right, Mr. Kennedy, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sort of. So do you want to briefly describe the project?
Sure. So the intent is to install 4 electric vehicle chargers along the back portion of the parking lot adjacent to the protected area. We'll be installing 1 utility pole. There's a layout. I'm not sure if you can see the layout we submitted, but there's a new utility pole that would go in. A single conduit would run from that utility pole down to a new branch panel board, which would then supply power to the 4 vehicle chargers along the parking lot edge.
All right, is there any questions from the commission?
I have one. I'm just wondering why you chose that spot versus maybe in front of the building where you wouldn't even have to talk to us.
The spaces along the front of the building, to my understanding, are too close to the main route. There's a setback issue, and as well as if we were to put the vehicle chargers along the front of the building, it would push the end of the spot too far out into the lot, which would then restrict vehicle access. They take up, a little bit of space with, a couple bollards in front of it. So the vehicle would end up having to park 3, maybe 4 feet away from the face of it. And that strip at the front of the lot is a little bit narrow for that.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? No, Brittany, anything?
No.
Anybody in the audience? Anybody on Zoom? If not, would somebody like to make a motion for?
That, can I just, I want to ask
Yeah.
a question, to follow up on David's question. We were out there and we all wondered about that location, Mr. Kennedy. And in that whole expanse of parking lot, et cetera, there's no other spot where you can put these charging stations that would be feasible and useful?
Not that wouldn't disrupt the number of parking spaces by encroaching on either the distance, the depth of the parking spots, or having to eliminate parking spots in the lot itself. So those spots are along the parking lot edge, which is, where we would typically aim to put them in a parking lot, because you're not changing any of the layout of the parking lot itself.
So, I'm sorry, so that in the picture there, the parking area and behind the building in the middle, there's nothing there that you could do to reconfigure lots? You're going to be bringing in a conduit anyway, you're going to be doing some disruption of the parking area, so there isn't any way you can put the charging stations kind of where the cursor is right now on the screen in that area?
Yes, so that would be an option, but if we put the charger along that center, vertical line in the picture, imagine this charger is, let's say, 2 feet in diameter, and then we've got a couple of bollards to protect it from vehicle strikes, which may add, a foot on, total. So you've got a 3-foot circle that we would be placing in the middle of those parking lines, and it would encroach into the parking spaces itself. So by putting it in that center area, we would most likely have to eliminate the parking spot behind where we're replacing it. Otherwise, we would be encroaching on 4 separate parking spots. Does that make sense?
I guess so, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody else? If not, would somebody like to make a motion for a -2 and a -3?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
I'm sorry, who seconded it officially?
I did.
Huggins.
Thank you.
Did I say all those in favor?
Yes,
Yes.
you
Yes,
did.
you did.
You did everything right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kennedy. That means that the negative determination is a positive thing for you. It means that you don't have to do any further filing before Conservation Commission. You can go ahead with the rest of the permitting process and go from there.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, next order of business, another request for determination of applicability. Dan Ogila, Down Cape Engineering for Lewis Bay Management LLC, 7 Franklin Street, proposed addition over existing deck and replacement of existing wooden stairway in the buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland and land subject to coastal storm flowage.
Good evening, Chairman Hoops, members of the commission. For the record, Dan Ogila. I'm a surveyor and civil engineer with Down Cape Engineering, Yarmouth Port. This project is a pretty straightforward one if you look through the materials. We've got a big existing second-story deck and stairs, and we're just replacing that with an addition. So there's zero change in footprint, no closer to the wetland. We checked in with Brittany. It's in the outer portion of your jurisdiction, so she thought it could come in as an RDA. There's a flood zone that next to lower portion of the building. This will be slab on grade, so flood zone compliant. We'll put in a drip edge, a roof dry well per the notes. So probably a little bit better situation than what's there now. Established a work limit line that's well away from the resource area, and pretty simple project. Be glad to answer any questions if you have them.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Any questions from the commission? Brittany?
No questions.
Did somebody say
No,
something?
I said no.
Brittany?
No.
Anybody in the audience? Anybody in Zoom? All right, if no further discussion among the board, would somebody like to make a motion for a -2 and a -3?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Super. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Dan. Next order of business is a continued notice of intent for SE 83-2392, Paul Mancuso BSC Group for Carl Valeri, 138 Kroll Road. Proposed dredging and beach nourishment in land under the ocean, coastal beach, land containing shellfish, and land subject to coastal storm flowage.
Good evening. My name is Paul Mancuso. I'm a wetland scientist with the BSC Group, and I'm here on behalf of the Crowell Beach Association for a proposed project at Crowell Beach, 138 Crowell Road. We were here a few weeks ago, presented the project. Essentially, we are proposing to dredge the tidal inlet back into a straight orientation, as is currently in the creek has meandered. Over time, the creek tends to meander up towards parcel 72 and along their stone revetment. And there have been previous permits. This is not improvement dredging, it's maintenance dredging, as this has been permitted before to dredge the channel straight back out into Lewis Bay, and we would then nourish the adjacent Crowell Beach with the sediment that has been dredged or other dredged material. When we were here last time, the commission requested that we obtain a peer review. There was a peer review done back in 2016 by Greg Berman. So he reassessed the situation and submitted a peer review, which we submitted responses to last week. And in his review, he does suggest that doing the dredging and beach nourishment in conjunction with each other to help the system, there is potential for leaving the creek as it is for it to fill in, which would impact the 6+ acres of wetlands upstream of the inlet where we are proposing dredging. And so essentially we would be helping prevent that by dredging the channel in a straight fashion, and they are proposing to do that annually. That was one of Mr. Berman's questions, was how often are they proposing to do this? And so the association has raised the funds, and they would like to do this annually to maintain that inlet in a straight configuration, to maintain the beach and sort of keep things as they are, rather than in the past when they had the permit, things weren't managed as well as they could have been, and the dredging was not performed annually. But by doing it each year, it should ensure that the inlet stays in a fixed position and the beach is better off that way as well. So if the commission has any questions based on the peer review and the proposed project, I would be happy to answer them.
Questions from the board?
I'll start, I guess.
Okay.
One of the things you said at the beginning was that you would take material that you dredged from this, but then you said other material?
Only dredge material. Initially, we had proposed getting compatible sand from upland sources, but we have taken that off the table. As in the peer review recommendation, he sort of recommended not bringing in upland sources, as that could sort of add to the potential of the creek clogging up. So we are not going to be doing that. Strictly dredge material. And we were initially starting with just material from the tidal inlet at Crow Beach. And if that was enough, then we would not need any other sources, but we would only be using dredge sediment per Mr. Berman's recommendation.
So I'm a little concerned about bringing in other material, just because, am I right? Just because we don't know where it's coming from. At least the material that you're dredging is there.
Mhm.
So I have a concern about that. I'll ask other questions as they come up. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
I don't know, to me, you keep, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and getting the same results? Every time you straighten this out, it goes back to the way nature wants it. So, the annual is the only way to go, and that's a lot of disruption in the system, is just my thought.
I would tend to agree. I mean, I don't understand to what extent. I mean, you've said that it's there to protect the marsh, but the marsh has been, that remnant piece of marsh has been functioning well, and it seemed to be quite healthy. And it's been, the channel has been changing and diverting and moving the same way for at least 25 years that I can remember looking in the past time, and through looking at aerial photos as well. So I'm not quite sure why there is a need to dredge, number one, and I don't see why. I mean, the reason for your nourishing with the dredge material is just the fact that the residents want a nicer beach, a bigger beach.
Well, if we redredge the channel straight, right now the beach is, I mean, the channel meanders through the beach, and so it would be to level out the beach. And yes, the wetlands above have been doing fine, but the creek has been dredged multiple times in the past couple decades. I don't know every instance it has been dredged, but it has been dredged, and the wetlands have been fine. Mr. Berman, in his report, did note that at the time of his site visit, it had not been dredged recently, and the channel had began meandering as it is now, which could cause some erosion along that rock revetment there in front of parcel 72. But he also noted that some of the vegetation at the front of the inlet was getting covered in sand at that point when he did his site visit, when the channel had not been dredged recently. I believe he had a photo in his report showing some of the Spartina getting buried in sand, basically in that location. I mean, that's not the photo. But so by maintaining the creek in a straight fixed position, you don't have as much sediment moving around. It won't end up burying some of the vegetation in the marsh, and it will certainly improve tidal flushing by straightening the course of that inlet. If you go, or I guess I haven't been there too recently, but when we surveyed the property within the last year, the inlet itself is extremely shallow. And if you had a big storm, it could totally fill that in. By dredging the inlet and keeping it straight, you're having more water coming in and out with each tidal cycle, which will improve the conditions in the marsh upstream. And with a deeper, more streamlined channel, there's much less likely for it to fill in following a storm event with the way it is now, where it's a very shallow, meandering channel. So that's some of the reasoning behind it.
Okay, I think its natural course is to meander. And it's shown that that's the case. It's changed position for time and time again, shortening up and lengthening out and doing more of a meander some years than others. I think the other issue with that you raised with sand coming across and filling up a little bit of the Spartina, it's like this is an inevitable thing. I mean, it's a natural process that. Especially given the fact that we're anticipating higher and higher tides into the future, this is the natural means for a marsh to move, is for the sand to get cover the lower ends, the closer to the ocean side of the marsh, and then hopefully allow it to continue to migrate landward and become new marsh. So you just haven't convinced me that the need for dredging is there, and because it seems to me like it's operating very well right now. The fact that it's shallow, I mean, I can take you to at least 2 other spots right along that same shoreline and show you the same thing. I don't know that, you haven't made a case to me for why you should dredge, number one, and it certainly doesn't make the case then why you should be able to nourish. So that's my 2 cents, so. Anybody
I
else?
tend to agree with you. Mother Nature hoards a straight line, and they keep trying to straighten it, and she keeps trying to bring it back to the natural state.
Yeah.
The peer reviewer suggested managing it cooperatively by dredging and applying beach nourishment, and, I mean, that is the peer reviewer's comments. I'm not coming up with that. I'm not making that up. So if he is the expert that we hired to review the project and he agrees that that's a good course of action, I don't, I mean, if we got the peer reviewer's opinion and then we ignored it, I'm not sure what the point of getting it was, to be perfectly honest.
Well, the whole point behind it is to get his opinion on it, but again,
I
it's
think his
ultimately we
opinion
have to
was-
make the decision, and we're the ones who have to sign our names to the document.
If action were to be taken, that would be, what you're proposing would be the cooperatively managed version. But I think him recommending against bringing upland sources was a recommendation against bringing any outside material into the system. He mentions a sediment budget, and bringing any outside material would overwhelm the sediment budget and bring the marsh more into the territory of being possibly overwashed with sand than it is now, because there'd be more sediment there.
That's fair. I mean, we would be willing to condition this that we're not bringing in sediment outside of Lewis Bay. I mean, we could just use sediment sources from within the bay. That way the sediment budget, everything that's coming in and out is staying in the system. We would not be bringing in, if that would please the commission, we'd be happy to condition it so that no outside sources of Lewis Bay are used, and it's strictly sediment from Lewis Bay. That way we're not overrunning the system, bringing in more sediment, and it would just be strictly from Lewis Bay.
That's all well and good, and I appreciate you being flexible. I still agree with the chairman in that the need to dredge has not been overwhelmingly established, and that the qualifications to dredge and nourish from the DEP handbook would be that dredging would have to be based on something that would be maintaining a navigational channel, improving access to a dock or pier or boat ramp, or an engineered project to increase storm damage protection from somewhere else. And I don't think this qualifies for any of those.
That's
From it.
from what, the DEP?
That's from the
DEP handbook.
Beach Nourishment Guide. Yeah, I just don't think that I don't think you've risen to show that it's a viable or useful project at this point, but that's me.
May I?
Yes.
I have 2 questions. One is to kind of educate me. We're going from a meandering to a straight. Just curious, is there a in-betweener?
I mean, I'm
Well, I mean, you can see how it meanders. I walk there every day because I live around the corner, and just about every day I'm there. So I've seen how it's changed. I understand the change, but you're going from a great meandering to a straight line, and I'm just wondering if there's a compromise in there. Has that been explored? Maybe no, and I don't know if that's even possible. It just,
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we have explored that option. I mean, part of the idea of having a straight channel is then you have better tidal flushing. I mean, as I mentioned, currently it's a very shallow channel. You dredge a slightly deeper channel. We're not talking like 6 feet deep or something, but then you have water traveling in a straight line. There's less resistance, easier for the water to get in and out of the marsh, better flushing for the plants and the organisms living in there. We have not explored the idea of some other shape
okay.
of the inlet.
And my second question is, what, let's say we did approve it, what would the effect be on the other side of the creek? Has that been explored? I mean, you have people who own property on the other side of the creek. Would that change
Yeah.
coming to them?
So, I mean, it's been dredged in the past, as you can see from the aerials. The beach on the other side, as far as I know, has not been impacted. The sediment sort of moves in the orientation of these photos in that direction, sort of where the creek meanders. And so you're not like, sediment from the Crow Beach side isn't like migrating over to their beach or however. I mean, it's not taking sand from their beach. It's not adding sand to their beach. I mean, the natural processes are bringing sand from the south up in that direction, but moving the channel doesn't stop or accelerate that necessarily.
Okay.
I would say that the peer review report would support that.
I'm sorry, say that again?
I think the peer reviewer supported that the sediment moves in a northwestern fashion in this area, and it doesn't have significant negative impacts to the area
Okay.
to the southeast.
I mean, that beach north of there seems to be pretty much the same throughout the whole course of those aerial photos over the last, 20 or 30 years, so.
I think
It
he was
comes
asking
down
about the
to
beach on
fact
the
that
other
they
side,
just
not
want a
on the
beach.
north.
I think they're asking about this beach here
Yeah,
to
they're
the
asking from
south.
the south.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
This on the other side of the piling, there's those
Right.
pilings
That's the beach I was asking about,
Yeah.
the other side of the pilings.
over there.
Back there, yes.
All right. Any other comments or questions from the commission, Paul?
A question here, I'm looking over again, the report about Mr. Berman's report. And it says in, I think it's in page 2, towards the bottom item, the number 1A, Mr. Berman states that not dredging the channel could lead to erosion of parcel 72. What is parcel 72?
That's the stone revetment that the creek has meandered along in front of. That's where he's talking about. It's the house at the end of Crow Road,
Okay.
just to the left of the Tidal Creek. I mean, the creek meanders right in front of their
Yeah.
stone revetment. So he's saying that it could erode out there, and probably not ideal for that revetment or that property.
So this will, and I know a number of different things. I think I was out there one time when somebody came in the middle of the night or something, and isn't that the same location? And so there's been difficulties over there. And
Yeah, that was brought up at the last hearing, and that was news to me and my colleagues. All I can say is now everybody in the association is on board with obtaining the proper permits. They want to do this the right way. Nobody's proposing or has any intention of doing anything like that.
So you're
They
act-
acknowledge that it happened, but
Yeah.
nobody's going to be doing that again. That's why, why we're here trying
Yeah,
to get the permits.
okay, got that. But your explanation in terms of the benefit of this, according to information provided by Mr. Berman, is that it will decrease the amount of erosion of property 72. It will maintain better flow into the marsh behind it. It also will, does it expand the beach area?
Yeah, well, by nourishing the beach, I mean, having the creek go out in a straight line,
And-
then you have the beach to the right of it, and
I know that also you said that it has to be pretty much maintained on a yearly basis to keep this thing from meandering back over the beach. And again, that's something that would be in the plan as well, to do this every single year?
Yeah, the association has the funds raised to do this annually. I think in the past, when they had the permit, it was not done annually, and it was kind of
Yeah.
not done as, or managed as well as it could have been. But they are committed to doing it annually, maintaining the beach profile that was previously permitted, and the channel profile as it was previously permitted. Not proposing anything new, same as it was permitted in the past. They would just be more on top of it and more committed to doing it each year so that they maintain their beach as it is.
Well, thank you for that discussion and explanation. But it does seem like you're kind of fighting against Mother Nature here. You know, I mean, it's gonna keep happening. Is this correct? It's gonna just keep happening and happening and happening. And you're gonna fight it every year for forever? You know, it seems like it's a exercise in futility in many ways.
Yeah, I mean, the creek will continue to meander, and the parcel 72 is probably the one that will be hit the hardest as far as if nothing is done. But there's lots of coastal projects where people are putting money into protecting their homes and their properties every year,
I'm
despite
sure.
the fact that sea level is rising. And yes, someday inevitably it might not really be practicable, but right now, if they have the money and they would like to protect their properties, I think they should be allowed to have that option, especially since it's not like they're proposing anything new. It's been permitted before, they've dredged it before, they've nourished it before, and there's been no serious negative effects on any of the surrounding properties as far as anybody has reported. So, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, Mother Nature she's not gonna stop, but
Yeah,
they
and
have
just
the right to protect
as an aside, I guess what I've learned on this committee is that committees like this are typically on the side of Mother Nature. You know, let Mother Nature do what it does because it works in the long run to be, the result of it is more beneficial to the wetlands and to everything else. The fighting it, the trying to manage it, it hasn't worked and will not work into the future very well. You know, I know it's done, but it doesn't work very well. Okay, thank you.
Are there restrictions on when you can dredge, if we did approve it?
Most likely there would be,
Okay.
that's-
But
Yeah,
again,
I'm sure
Can I
there'll be.
say something?
Yeah,
I was just
sorry.
noting that you keep saying it's gonna be the same as the last time you dredged, but according to what I can see, you're dredging more than 2 times as much. It says the last license approval was 80 cubic yards of dredging, and you're looking to do 190?
I'm not sure where you're getting those numbers. The channel profile is what they're matching, and so the dredge channel profile is what will be the same as was dredged last time and under the previous permits. If more sand fills into that channel, then to get back to that profile, you'd have to take out more sediment to achieve that same profile. So it's not like they're digging it deeper this time, it's the same channel, but if you dump more sand into the area where you're digging from to get to that profile, you have to take more out.
So if under there is a cubic yard volume listed on the Chapter 91 license.
I think that was based on the profile that was, or the survey profile that was taken
Was
when
submitted
that
at the
was-
time. So it wouldn't need to be, it should list in the conditions, then it would be a variable amount, but it doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, I think the plan says dredge to -1, which, so that's the depth. I mean, I think it's generally dredge -1,
Okay.
K -2, but yeah, it would not be, it would be matching that profile. And so one of Greg Berman's concerns was it doesn't say exactly how much nourishment or volume of dredging would be coming out. And that is, prior to any dredging event, they would survey the channel, they would survey the beach before any nourishment. Then our engineers calculate how much would be required to match the permitted profile, and that's how much would be dredged or brought in, or not brought in, but brought onto the beach. So it would just be matching those profiles, but it would be a pre-nourishment and pre-dredge survey. It would not be, so we would know exactly how much would be coming out prior to the dredging and how much would be going on the beach prior to the nourishment.
Okay.
well, a couple of times you referred to it as protecting property, but I see this mostly as maintaining a beach, keeping a beach, and not really protecting property. It's more putting a beach there so that they can use instead of.
The property, parcel 72 is the seaward-facing property that will be impacted most, as right now, I mean,
With the
if you were
seawall.
to walk up
Well, they
that
have the
stone revetment,
seawall
you would be
there.
in their backyard. Further up the street, obviously, they're not directly impacted in their properties, but they are all a part of the association. That is their beach, and so they're just trying to protect the resources they have, and also that the properties abutting the beach there.
Well, I think that's why the seawall was put in, wasn't it?
that's what I would think, but. Okay. Any other questions? Brittany, any comments beyond that, or?
I think I've expressed everything I wanted to.
Okay, is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak on this subject? Is it 2 people? Okay, so if you would, you just go over to the podium, and I think it should be turned on there. If you would state your name for the record, and are you on a butter? And if you could just, I ask anybody who makes any public comments that try and stay focused and keep it your comments aimed as it relates to wetlands and wetlands protection. Okay,
Got it.
all right.
I'm Nancy Villanizki, and I am the abutter.
I'm sorry, Nancy, could you spell your last name?
Vilaniskis.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I have owned this property for 27 years, and I have watched the creek meander left and right. Mostly now the creek is meandering to the right, and it's in front of the Salvucci's property. What I don't understand is how can the Kroll Beach Association come upon this board and request dredging where they do not own the property? The Salvucci's own the property, and the deeded beach rights people at Kroll Beach are allowed to use the beach. It has come from maybe 50 people that have deeded beach rights to now that beach is just filled and filled all summer long with people I don't even think have deeded beach rights. So I just don't understand how they can even come up against this board and request the dredging of the creek. So I'm against dredging of the creek, obviously, as I am an abutter, because it could affect my beach. And I have deeded beach rights people that enjoy my beach very much, and they are against it. Unfortunately, some of them couldn't be here today. So thank you for listening to me, and I hope you decide negatively. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Just briefly, I'm the living historian, Attorney Jack Perrone. I live at 65 Heritage Drive.
I'm sorry, last
Mrs.
name?
Villanizki said I am a deeded beach right owner.
Last name?
Perrone, Perrone.
Thank you, Jack.
And I've been living at 65 Heritage Drive for probably over 36 years. And even before Mrs. Villanizki, I can say as a living historian that at one time there was, and I don't know how, there was a trench that was placed between the creek and the marsh right out to Lewis Bay. Because originally, the Mother Nature had the original creek going in front of the Salvucci property. But guess what? Over the course of years, Mother Nature will do what Mother Nature is going to do, and that was a quote from Charlie Ardito, who, God bless his soul, was one of the deeded beach rights owners, of which there are about 10 of us, by the way, who have legal deeded beach rights. And to Mrs. Villanizki's property, the main thing is we want to make sure that, it isn't altered or damaged or negligently destroy the private beach rights. Mother Nature's going to do as you're right. Mother Nature's going to do. I have seen the trench that was built there. It solved maybe a situation with somebody just a little bit down further, but Mother Nature returned to exactly where it is today. And without getting into great detail, I don't think the Villanizki's want to take the responsibility of allowing something to happen where they are an agent to someone who's going to negligently destroy the value of our property and Mrs. Villanizki's property and our deeded property rights, because there's a whole boatload of legal liability of which I'm very familiar, being an attorney myself. But I just will respectfully say, I feel bad people are entitled to, and I knew some wonderful people over there that still are there that have a beach, but they do not have, from my understanding, except the Villanizki's have a legal right to the front of that beach. Fine. They have an association, not deeded beach rights. But the point is, Mother Nature just is going to do what they're going to do and just allow the creek to be exactly where it is. And if you start messing around, because this is not the first time this has been proposed. And it's going to keep coming back and coming back and coming back. So again, for the record, without going into great detail, I just want to express my opposition to those of us and those of the other deeded property beach owners who have also expressed their concern and opposition through emails. And so therefore, I just want to confirm that I saw visible proof that original trench went straight out to Lewis Bay but Mother Nature did what she was going to do anyway. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'd just like to confirm that we do have a butter comments in opposition from 6 neighbors and a butter comments in favor from 2 neighbors that are all available for viewing on our website, because I'm not going to read all of them right now, unless you'd like me to.
No, I'm not going to read them, but I would.
The commission has
call-
reviewed them already. I just wanted to make it known.
Do you have the, I
people
was
in
trying
the
to do the
audience,
final
I
count.
forget.
What was the final count?
And just make sure I don't have
I see
anyone
one in
doubled.
favor.
There's 2 in favor.
Oh, okay,
And
got it.
5 opposed.
5?
Let me just make sure this
All right,
is
I'll get to you in just a minute. Well, we'll might as well just get this right now. So we have 5 letters opposed, 2 in support of. Those opposed are from Greg and Karen Salvucci, Lucy Tessier, Kasia Coulter, Dennis Murphy,
and Adam.
Jessica Dale, Adam Cormack, and 2 in favor, 1 from Mrs. H. Terry Manning, and Karen and Greg Salvucci. Sorry.
Yes.
You read them as.
Yeah,
a
sorry,
negative.
I read them the wrong way. They were in favor of.
Okay.
So 2 and 5. 2 at 4, 5 opposed. All right, go ahead if you go up to the podium and state your name, and then if you would just spell your last name, so.
Good evening. Carl Valeri, V as in Victor, A-L-E-R-I, homeowner, 47 Crowell Road, West Yarmouth, also president of the Crowell Beach Association. I've been involved in this process, and some of you are familiar, and some have moved along over the past 10, 12 years. And the last time we were working with the former owners, Waypet, which were not the Salvucci's, we had come to an agreement about how to proceed. But prior to that time, town council had acknowledged that there were 20 deeded beach right owners in addition to the parcel 72 owners at the time who had right to apply and appeal for the dredging permits. So that was established by town council and acknowledged that we had standing to apply for the permit. And we also have a letter of support from the Salvucci's to apply for the permit on their behalf. So we're clear. We have standing to be here tonight, and that was established when I think it was Bruce, the attorney Bruce Burr, who retired a few years ago, who had looked at our condition and acknowledged that we had standing to file for applications. As a side note, I fail to understand why the dredging is actually such an issue. The dredging would allow the creek to meander, allow the creek to go straight, and yes, we'll take responsibility for doing this as long as we can, because we want to take an active position in it. But if you were there, and I think many of you have already walked the site, you would see that at low tide, 3/4 of the beach has eroded and is into the bay. Now, every day, the water is carried out by the wetlands, is fighting the sea coming in and trying to bring the sand back up to the beach. The beach will heal itself, but it's fighting this stream, and the stream is carrying the sediment and carrying the beach. There is 3/4 of the beach is gone. It's substantially limited. So to the extent that we can dredge, keep the thing going straight, allow Lewis Bay to correct itself and bring the beach sandwiches out about 100 yards, which otherwise would find its way back up to the beach, I fail to see what the impact is and why it is not something that is encouraged. I mean, you're right about, I think you made a good comment about definition of insanity. I do that every day at pickleball. I keep doing the same thing, like all these wrong decisions we make. But we're willing to spend that money, which, by the way, the most costly part of this process is, frankly, Paul. I mean, it costs us, I think, up to $12,000, $15,000 now over the past 6 to 9 months. I still believe it's money well spent and all the other things necessary to be able to present to you folks. The dredging itself is not very consequential when it comes to how much time and energy it takes. But we're talking about opening in an area, putting it up against the seawall, which, by the way, is being eroded. And at some point, that seawall will continue to be undermined and it'll collapse. And at some point, we'll have kids running on stones. But I don't see what the harm is of allowing the stream to go straight, us taking a proactive activity on it and maintaining it to go straight, and just using the materials that are there to go up against the seawall, and then just allowing nature and the wave action bring the rest of the beach, which is out there 100 yards, back onto the shore. So, in any case, wanted to clarify that one thing. I'm glad I did. I'm glad I had a chance to present to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sure.
Good evening. My name is Tom Houston. My wife and I own the residence at 24 Crowell Road. We are members of the Crowell Road Beach Association. I am a registered professional civil engineer in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and I have served as a consultant to 10 different conservation commissions in the Commonwealth, so I'm quite familiar with the Wetlands Protection Act and the implementing regulations under 310 CMR. I've reviewed the plan that the BSC group has provided. It is a revised plan that has been updated to reflect the concerns of the peer reviewer. The BSC group has responded and concurs with the recommendations of the peer review. I had also read the recommendations for time of year restrictions that the Division of Marine Fisheries provided. The project is compatible with implementation of those time of year restrictions. So in my opinion, the project as depicted on the revised plan, if pursued consistent with the recommendations of the peer reviewer and the time of year restrictions, I believe the project can be completed in a manner that is consistent with the protection of the interests of the Act. I also bring informally a very long period of observation of this beach. My family has owned our property for over 60 years, and there is a legitimate concern that the project not defy Mother Nature. Well, if you go back far enough, the present aggressive meandering of the creek has not always occurred there. I believe, although I have no scientific basis for determining it, but I would believe that other permitted projects, particularly the construction of numerous jetties in this area, have disrupted the natural littoral transport of sand along the beach. So I would suggest that Mother Nature perhaps is not causing the creek to meander, but other human activities have caused that. So perhaps allowing the dredging and the restoration of the beach is more consistent with the original natural systems that occurred in the area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else?
My name is Carmen Comite, C-O-M-I-T-E. I am I've been here in the Cape over 40 years, a member of the Crowell Beach Association. And in looking at the pictures that were presented earlier, for over the last 40 years, I was delighted to see that the beach erosion issue on the people who are saying that they're abutters and complaining has not occurred. The beach on their side, if I were them, I would be here complaining as well. But when I look at the pictures, and you've got 40 years' worth of pictures, it basically says that this project hopefully will allow the stream to go back and forth, again, according to the amount of money that has been spent, stop the erosion of somebody's property. As you can see, those rocks are being undercut very well, and preserve, excuse me, and preserve the beach on the left side. So as an interested but hopefully neutral party, I'm trying to say that the approval of this project seems to be a win-win. It's a win for the commission in terms of the back and forth flow, protecting what's going on, which is the most important part. It's a win for the people on the right side. They're not going to lose any beach. And it's a win for the people on the left side because there is going to be no beach with continued erosion. And that's why I am making a few comments, hopefully independent, but not truly, because I do enjoy the beach. But I've been here over 40 years, and if I look around this room, there's probably 400 years worth of people sitting here who are asking for your approval to do what we are asking. And thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. Anybody else? Last time? No? Okay. Is there anybody on Zoom who would like to make a comment on this? I see nothing. I see no hands there. Is there any further discussion among the commission? Yes, sir.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Hi, my name's John Ciccarelli, Ciccarelli, 82 Kroll Road. We have been property owners there at both 82. We own 82 and 78. And we have deeded beach rights in our deed. And when we first came to Crowell Beach, we remember the stream going straight out. Over time, it did come back in a little bit, but then it went back out. But the loss of the beach now is truly difficult to understand. And there are 20, I think it's 20, is it? There's 20 properties that do have deeded beach rights, that have rights to that property, along with the Salvucci's, who have, since they have purchased the property, have been very accommodating and very supportive of the association and what we're trying to do. So I'd just like to say, I mean, I've watched it for 30 years go in different directions, but this is the most severe that I've ever seen. And we certainly would like your support of trying to see if we can't mitigate this. So thank you very much for your time and your efforts.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else? Last chance. All right, unless there's any further discussion among the board, would somebody like to make a motion to approve the project with special conditions?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Pat voted
Pat, you voted no?
opposed.
No.
Okay, so 3-2, the project does not carry. That's all we can do at this time. We have
I'm the next one, so.
Okay. Next order of business is another notice of intent for SE 83-2399. I'm just going to take 2 minutes
Yeah,
while
maybe
the
that's
room clears,
clear.
and then we'll start again.
order, if it's a 3-2, don't you have the majority of the quorum? Or is
It was 2 to 3.
Two for,
Two
3
for,
opposed.
3 opposed.
Yeah.
That was a
Yeah,
good
if it would have
point.
been the other way around, yes, it would have passed. All right, next order of business is a notice of intent for SE 83-2399 Paul Mancuso BSC Group Incorporated for John Nellenbach and Linda Jean, 72 Gleason Avenue, proposed reconfiguration of floats and pilings on an existing pier and land under the ocean and land containing shellfish.
All right, Paul Mancuso again, wetland scientist from BSC Group, here on behalf of Linda Jean Nellenbach at 72 Gleason Ave. The project is, they have an existing pier, ramp, and float. The ramp and float are not were not installed as the approved plans would show it. And so our initial application was to reorient the floats as they were originally proposed, so that they match the Chapter 91 license. We recently received comments back from Chapter 91. They had initially told the clients that they, since their ramp and float are not in compliance with the plan, that they would have to, that they could not file a minor modification to have the ramp and float permitted as it currently is. We had some more communication with Chapter 91, and they did recently tell us we could get an amendment to the license as opposed to a minor modification to keep it how it is. However, through conservation, their permit is for a different orientation that is shown. And so now that we've received those comments from Chapter 91, it would be more simple for the homeowner if they could keep the current configuration and then apply for an amendment from Chapter 91 to keep the pier and float, keep pier ramp and float as it is. So that would be one option. The other option would be to, I think it would involve removing or relocating 2 of the pilings to bring the ramp and float into compliance with the original plans. And so that would be option number 2. That would require more disturbance to the existing habitat. You'd have to remove the 2 pilings and relocate them. But since speaking with Chapter 91 and them offering us this alternate solution of filing for an amendment to the license to keep the structure as it currently is, which also does provide slightly more water depth than the approved configuration, the homeowners would like to take that route if that would be acceptable from the commission. Otherwise, if they would be required to put it back into compliance with the original plans, they would agree to do that as well. But ideally, they would obtain approval to leave the pier ramp and float as it is, and then they would file for an amendment with Chapter 91, which we have received word from them that that would be acceptable. So it's not quite what we submitted, but we just got an email from them after we submitted, because initially they told us you couldn't do the minor mod, but then they came back and said you can do the amendment. So if we can go the amendment route, we would prefer that, but if the other route is what you would prefer, then we can go that way as well.
Wow, I wish they got back to you sooner.
Chapter 91.
Yeah, it was through email. Callie Harper is a reviewer at Chapter 91. I believe the homeowner initially reached out, and then as we were filing, they asked us, hey, can you reach out and see if you can get a different response? And when we reached out, instead of just saying, no, you cannot do a minor mod, they said you could do an amendment instead, which is a little bit more work on the permitting end for Chapter 91, but it is no work as far as removing the pilings and relocating them.
Was that since Monday when we were out there, when you received it?
I think I got it last week. I'm not sure when you're out there, or...
We were there Monday, that's what I'm asking.
How deep is the water now at the end, at mean low? It looks like
I do have
half a foot. Permitted.
I guess I don't know the depth. I think it's minus 2.6 is what they have at the end of the floats as they are shown, and then if they were to reorient it, looks like minus 2.2. So it's not too much of a difference, but .4
Low.
feet does add a little bit of water depth.
So the idea,
Yeah.
the idea then, are you withdrawing this and you would still have to, you'd have to still keep a new plan, right? Where you would show us the existing, although even though this has been existing for how many years now? 20, okay. Is that the idea that you would do then?
Yeah, I mean, preferably
You would
not
just
relocate the pilings and relocate the ramp
Just
and float,
continue it until you can,
and then get the amendment from Chapter 91. That would be, I think, the ideal way.
Would they need an updated permit? Because there was an old one that was closed out. That's why they couldn't do any new
yeah,
work.
because that's, I guess that's my question, is like, do we need to,
Issue?
So, yeah, I mean, I think the original permit through conservation also had the orientation that the Chapter 91 plan has, so technically it does not match
Okay.
the permit on record, or the old order of conditions that,
That would be why they didn't get, that they were issued the COC, even if it didn't match the Chapter 91, which is what we were talking about earlier.
we've issued the COC, but
But the orientation did not match the Chapter 91 license. So that's why they
the
wanted to change it.
orientation was not what was permitted, but what is currently now, right?
You weren't out there.
All right, so I guess,
I think no work in the water is better, having more depth. So I'd be in favor of leaving it as it is.
I mean, I'm in favor of leaving it as it is. I'm just trying to figure out what do we need to do in terms of permitting? Do we just approve this project without any further information? I mean, it's,
Well, the one on here,
If we voted this project as it's presented down,
yeah, we just need a revised plan, I think.
yeah, that will show that that's what's
What's
proposed. Yeah,
true.
the plan is a little backwards, because
Yeah.
we just got this information, but a revised plan showing the current location as the proposed location.
so you're just saying vote in favor of this and then get a revised plan before we issue a new order? Is that what you're saying?
I think so.
I'm not sure. I mean, wouldn't we, what's in front of us is the proposal to change.
To bring it back into compliance for Chapter 91,
Can't vote yes to bring a change and then tell them they can keep it the way it is. To me, you'd have to vote no, and
You
then,
can vote verbally to approve of a revised plan showing XYZ, which we've done in the past.
okay,
I'm
that's,
sorry, say that one more time.
We can approve a revised plan showing what we want to see without seeing it. As long as
Good, but you're good accepting and approving
think
the
I
plan
can-
if we do it that way, right?
yeah.
I guess that's all I'm concerned about then at this point, so I got no problems with it.
Because we get a little more water, but not much.
Yeah, it's still
no-
pretty shallow, but it was permitted a long time ago.
you know, just basically make it so that they don't have to relocate the pilings, and,
Right.
I mean, it's
Less
minimize the
disturbance.
disturbance by leaving it the way it is.
The only thing I would ask would be, it doesn't ground at low tide, does it?
No, we have, mean low water is -2, so it's at 2.
That's what I'm a little struggling to see on this diagram, what the dotted line is. Is that at the ground?
It looks like your drawing is showing it's grounding out, right?
Yeah.
Your profile?
I mean, it's right below there. It's a little below, but yeah, I see what you're saying.
I would just ask if float stops would be something we could just add to make it better for the environment.
Add what?
Float stops,
Okay.
would that be agreeable? It would just go underneath the float so that the float can't go any deeper upon low tide. So it wouldn't sit on the ground. It would be lifted a little.
It's like it's literally exactly what it says.
Legs.
It's a
It's like
stop.
legs.
so the float doesn't go all the way down onto the substrate.
Surface area of the float is not resting on it, it's just the supports or the float
Yeah.
stop.
Think of like the thing that, you know how you have the protection on the bottom of a chair, you know, those little thing, it's like something like that. It's like sits the corners of the float, just to keep the float from resting completely on the substrate.
Attached to the float.
Yeah, to the bottom of the
Be
float.
on the bottom, yeah.
How thick are these usually? I mean,
They're usually at least to keep it at least a foot off the ground there, but again, you don't see them. It's just, they're literally underneath the float. And it's just designed to keep the float from
I got nothing.
bottoming out.
Do you want us to talk in the microphone, or do you want us to talk?
Just say yes.
That would be the best. It's really not an inconvenience to you. It actually saves the float a little bit too. It gives a little bit more life to the float, but.
With all the silt that's there.
But-
Yeah, it would be in the silt less, so it wouldn't sit in the silt. Right?
Okay. So as long as you add the float stops and come up with a new revised plan, I don't have any other issues with it.
I agree.
I agree.
I agree.
Okay. Did you have a question?
no.
Anybody in the audience on Zoom? Would somebody like to make a motion to approve the project with special conditions and pending receipt of a revised plan showing the existing as the now permitted one position, and the special condition being added that they add float stops to the float?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Is that you, Willie?
Yep.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Thank you, we'll get you that revised plan in the next week or so. Thank you.
Sounds good, thank you.
All right, next order of business is another notice of intent for Dan Ogila, Down Cape Engineering, for Joseph Gilmore, 150 South Street, proposed construction of a fixed pier, ramp, floats, and land under the ocean, a coastal beach, land containing shellfish, fish runs, and land subject to coastal storm flowage.
Good evening, Chairman Hoops, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Dan Ogila. I'm a land surveyor and civil engineer with Down Cape Engineering in Yarmouthport. This is a pier, proposed pier on a very large site down near the end of the river. This is the mouth where Bass River opens up into the open sound to the south. And sometimes, depending on the wind, you get some rollers that come up and some pretty good waves, but not too bad. There's a breakwater, as you guys know. You can see in the photograph, which is at the end of the site. The breakwater on the east side extends out, and the west side goes out a bit, and there's that landing there. And then so here's the site. You may remember this is a Rivers Front redevelopment project where we introducing, I think we started with some wildflower meadows, but we've certainly got some beach grass and other things. We retreated the house back, and there's a pool, and the house is out of the V zone and well back now, out of the picture even, the new one that's under construction. But so here's the pier. You can see there's piers proud of it on either side. The blue pier. We do need a length variance to get out into the deeper water. As you may remember, up the way with Jesse's Lane and so forth, if you couldn't quite make the depth, you just bring it back to the 85 and dredge. But I think in 2016, that option was taken away, so now would need a variance to dredge with the shorter pier, or a variance in the length. And we'll argue that the length variance on this one is the lesser of two evils. Again, it's a very, I think it's 160 feet out to the channel, which does come in on a bit of an angle here. That's further directly opposite the pier, so there's a very good distance out to the navigable channel. And there is adequate water depth 21 feet short of the piers on either side. So in other words, if you were coming along here, along the shore, you'd have to go in 21 feet to impact our end of the pier. And so I'll go through some of those in general, but we did go through this carefully with the Waterways Committee. They looked at it. They're the ones that judge the Shellfish and Waterways Committee, the hazard to navigation aspect of it. They carefully considered it and looked at the position on the river, how wide the channel is and how far away it is. The piers being, get my figure correct, 23 feet proud of it on either side. We got a couple hundred feet of frontage there, a very significant amount of frontage on the lot. We've got 105 feet to the piers, 100 on either side, so it's a good separation distance. To our east is Bob Childs, longtime river resident in his 90s, still goes to work every day over in Dennis. But I was talking to him on the project. He's pretty comfortable with it, so I don't think you'll get any opposition from him. There's some unique fingers along here that build up the shore and have probably shoaled up the edges a bit. Were it not protected with a licensed revetment and the stone groins, it may well have scoured and would have the depth at 85, but that's just the hand we're dealt. It's a little shallow going out. But again, we're quite a bit short of those piers on either side, where you can almost see the swell here coming in. It's right near the mouth of the river. It's not an area where sailboats would tack. They're up in the more open areas and more sheltered areas. And even if they were, it's very, very reasonable being 23 feet back of the piers on either side. So we've got the plan. We revised it 7/8/1823. I'll just touch on the narrative a little bit.
Actually, can I just ask you a question before you get into the narrative or anything?
Sure.
Am I reading these are soundings? These are soundings below mean water that are?
So you've got to be very careful with the numbers. Yeah, it's very important for the board to understand that almost all piers come in now, since they changed the Chapter 91 regulations, using mean sea level datum, not mean low water datum. It used to be back in the day would use mean low water datum, and there's roughly for a 2-foot difference between the two. We use a little bit more conservative value here, 2.2 feet. The one that came in before you is way up inland, and the tidal range tends to attenuate just a little bit as you go up the river. So they were about 2 foot with mean low water. But what that means is that even though it reads like it's -2, that's low tide. That's 0 on the mean low water. And so where that shows up here is it says mean low water is -2.2. So we've got it so that if you look, there's a spot grade of 4.67, I believe. I have to take my glasses on.
Yeah, right by the float.
Float, yeah. Which really means we've only got 3. When you check out the 2.2, we've only got a little bit more than, or we got a little bit more than 2.5 feet of water on the shallow side, and we got a little bit more than 3 feet on the deep side. So just enough to get the boat in there with 3 feet, which is the minimum. So if we went out any further, well, we wouldn't need to go out any further, but while it does look like there's a bunch of water, that conversion of knocking 2 feet off does make a big difference.
Okay. So you're only looking for the variance on the length?
Length is the only variance that we need.
To match.
Yeah, everything else matches up perfectly. We're no deeper, and that is in your regulations. You don't go any further than you have to. We're going the absolute minimum, and Waterways looked at that carefully with us and did look at the shellfish report, and they carefully studied the hazard of navigation and made a unanimous decision that it was not a hazard of navigation.
Okay.
The site is, you want me to just buzz through real quick, or?
No, I think you meet all of the only thing that you're really asking for in variance is the length, and you've discussed the shellfish side.
Yeah, I can certainly short it up if you like, but if there's anybody that's on the fence on it, John Lowell did the shellfish survey, long time, and he found basically nothing there. We're going to donate $500 by hook or by crook to the Shellfish Relay Fund to donate to the town, and we'll also move those couple of shellfish if they do impact any of the pier as is required. Again, it's I think he got 1 cherry stone and 1 quahog in all the plots that he did out there, and maybe 2 little seedlings. I would just read in on page 3, the length of the proposed fixed pier is 101.5 for mean high water, and the rampant floats is 131.5. So that length is necessary to attain a 3 foot of water at mean low water at the end of the floats without dredging, which is your requirement without variance. So we are requesting a variance to be allowed to be more than the 80 from mean high water due to the hardship conditions. And I would quote, the commission may, and I quote, at its discretion waive one or more of these regulations when the proposed work will not adversely affect any area subject to the protection of these regulations. That's your 401. Here, there will be no adverse effect whatsoever to any area subject to the protection of these regulations. And that is, what I mean by that is the extension beyond 85. As Brittany has noted, there's always a few minor things that could be considered deleterious, but I would argue too that perhaps there's some benefits to having basically what's an artificial reef out there. And we're using inert piles on this one. We're going to spend the money to do fiberglass piles is our intention. That would, in that way, not leach any CCA, which is one of the few things that they do negatively. And, you know, if we can keep some of the shellfish safe so we get some nice breeding quantities under the pier, it might not be such a bad thing. But just to go back to that narrative, and you've probably read it, but just to buzz through real quick, the pier will be shorter than the immediately abutting piers by about 21 feet when a line is drawn to the extent of the two abutting piers and floats. We maintain it's better environmentally to attain the 3 foot than to construct a length-conforming pier, which would only be used at mid and high tide. And then, you know, you'd have people trying to get their boat up in there and prop dredging and so forth, which is never a good thing. So I think the right thing to do here is just to grant a little bit of an extension and have a nice, safe pier. Maintaining the floats in 3 water with a greater depth as one heads out to the channel meets the intent of the regulations to minimize boat traffic impacts, thereby not being detrimental to the public and/or shell fishery. We're willing to provide additional public benefit in the form of purchasing shellfish, a minimum of $500, as I said, to benefit the public good, and in areas that the Natural Resources Department deems lacking. Accordingly, we meet the criteria to vary that pier length requirement. That's the only variance we're looking for, and the rest of them goes through. But again, we are going to spend the money on the fiberglass. It's a little bit more money, but we feel there's a good fit in this area, nice, strong piles, which will hold up for a long time and not damage the environment. And again, I would point to the picture that shows, you know, just how wide that channel is in this area. It's over 105 feet, 160 feet, I'm sorry, to the channel edge as it's marked between the buoys. And it's, the piers on either side are proud of it. It's a great big frontage, centered on the lot, doing everything right, except we just do need that bit of a variance to get out to the deeper water without dredging. I would certainly appreciate your careful consideration of this very unique property with the groins that do hold the sand catchers against the edge, and the big piers on either side, the extensive frontage, the lack of any traffic, and the environmental benefit of a $500 donation to the Shellfish Relay Fund. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the board?
The hardship condition, is that not reaching the depth? Is that what the hardship is?
Yeah, I mean, yes, you know, as a waterfront property owner, he'd really like to enjoy being able to navigate from the property with a vessel. And if it's shorter, he's not going to be able to do that except on a very limited tide range. So the variance would be to allow that extra depth so that he can navigate, you know, and going fishing early in the morning. If he couldn't go till noon, it would be hardship, and then he's got to zip back before the tide drops or be out there for 12 hours. So that's the hardship, the fishing and navigating.
I can see having waterfront property that you would like to do that, but quite honestly, there's probably more than 50% of boat owners who are suffering with this hardship condition itself, too. So, to me, just because you have the property doesn't really give you a hardship. That's just my thought.
Well, the standard for the variance is just that we don't derogate from the, you know, the performance standards, and the performance standards look at, you know, the shellfish habitat and things like that. It's very poor habitat out there. Mr. Lowell couldn't find any shellfish anywhere near the end of this pier, so the couple of piles that are out there and having the boat a little bit deeper, you know, seems to me to be a better for the environment than having it in shorter, which, you know, he could do, but, you know, would rather not. So we'll take a split vote on it if that's what it is, but, it seems pretty reasonable. It's a very unique situation. I know you study each one of these individually and look at them carefully. Here, you've got a tremendous frontage, you've got the groins, you've got a unique set of circumstances that I think could warrant a variance, and would sure appreciate the careful consideration for that.
The other,
Oh, I'm sorry.
other side I have is, I don't think I was at that waterways meeting, and I can tell you for a fact, those little sailboats do tack in that area to get out of the channel. They do, I've seen them. So I don't know why waterways doesn't see that, but maybe they should get out there and watch more often.
Well, it's a highly trafficked area out
It
towards
is a
as you.
highly trafficked area. That's
as
the
you're
only way
getting
you
out,
can get
but-
away from the moored boats on the other side is by tacking in there.
Yeah.
But that isn't in the purview of this committee.
So, just a couple of questions. First of all, just I'm curious about the purpose of those groins along there. They were probably installed many, many years ago. What do they do?
So,
Make it
they
more
used to-
shallow?
yeah, they call them sand catchers back in the day, and I have the blow-up picture here, but.
That's okay, I can see them.
Yeah, you can see that they do tend to do their job, some better than others, but to build up sand along the edge. They'd also break the force of an incoming wave a little bit, but principally they were always called sand catchers, and that's why they were
But that
installed.
doesn't, I'm sorry, Dan, but it doesn't have any bearing on this pier at all.
So, well, if you can imagine if they weren't there and the profile moved back, then it had deeper water at 85 would be my point. By building out the sand and catching the sand, it would tend to attenuate the profile and perhaps raise it a bit. Whereas if you didn't have them, it could scour easily, and perhaps you'd have the depth at 80 feet instead of where we are. So that would be the argument there, that they've artificially built up the shore and shoaled it a bit. Whereas if they weren't there, perhaps then it would be a more natural condition, and we may have the depth. Again, it's.
So, probably it sounds like if they were removed, but there's probably no appetite for removing them and therefore having a shorter pier. Am I understanding this?
Yeah, I mean, you're right.
It would take time, I
At this
think.
point, they're full of wildlife. They've got rock
Okay.
crabs in them. They're assimilated with the environment, and I think it would do a lot more harm than good to pull them up at this point. But it is the fact that you can look at every site, and if they don't have licensed rock groins, it's not the same as Mr. Gilmore, who had those. And we've got very prominent piers on either side of us that stick out 26 feet, 3 feet further than we do. So that is a pretty unique situation, and it's a vast frontage, so the sailboats could easily tack, on either side.
So my other question is, if the pier was 80 feet, how deep would the water be?
So at 85, you're only talking about a foot and a half, you'd be talking about 3.5 feet in this area here, which when you take the 2 feet out would only be a foot and a half of water. So you could get in there with a
So this
whaler.
is being,
That is low tide?
Always at low tide would be
this
referred
is,
to.
this is being designed for a pretty big boat.
It would be designed per your regulations, and as you look at the fisheries letter that came in, they very concern themselves very much with that. They go with a 2.5 foot, and they were concerned that even on the high side of ours, we might not quite have that 2.5 feet. But in looking at it, we have a spot grade. I don't know if she got a microscope out there. They are pretty small, but if you do the 2.5 plus 2.2 feet, you get 4.7, which is exactly what we have there, 4.67 feet. So we're okay on the inside, but any shorter, and this letter gets a lot firmer, don't put the floats in there, put float stops, and all kinds of things which are awkward. And then you still have the prop dredging problem, because if the boat goes in that low at anything other than, near high tide, within a couple hours of high tide, he could be stirring up the sediments, and that could hurt the shellfish. So I think it's better to have it out a few more feet. Again, it's 23 feet shorter than the one on either side. It's 160 feet from the channel when you only have to be, 100?
I think you misunderstand. So what I'm saying is you're designing this for a big boat. If you had a little Boston whaler, it wouldn't be a problem, right?
Oh, yeah, if he had a kayak, we wouldn't even be here, yeah.
How about a Boston whaler?
Well, again, you can't even put a float in according to your regulations unless you have this depth. So, I don't make the rules, but I think they're there for a reason, and And like up the street at Jesse's Lane, you know, you took a look at it and say, well, shorten the pier up, so they dredged, and back then you could do that. Well, you still can do it, but you need a variance. And, you know, then you've got a hollow in here which might silt up, and it might create, you know, eddy currents, and it's just probably, at the end of the day, not as good for the environment as just a clean couple of inert piles and having the boat out with a proper depth.
Dan, I think I've been omitted from that DMF email, if you wouldn't mind
Oh, sure.
emailing it to me when you have the opportunity. Did you get it today?
I
PM?
believe so, yeah.
Otherwise, I didn't get it.
It came in August 3rd at 12:14 PM, which would be today. Yeah.
Did not receive it.
Yeah,
But I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Send a strongly worded letter to DMF about that.
Yeah, it went to,
Said anything.
boy, it almost always catch you. There's Conrad Sayat at yarmouth.ma.us, so they must have had a bad name.
Conrad Kia, he's the old shellfish
shellfish
officer, so
constable,
he's
but-
retired now.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, that's why. Do you want to, you want me to read it in for the record? Or not?
Can you just make do you mind if we just make a copy of it real quick? Could you make a
Absolutely,
copy
yeah.
real quick?
Yeah, a little bit of
I
hand
mean, as long
scratch
as you
on it.
email it to me later, I'm happy to review it.
Well, I'm good with that too. I mean,
The more, it's more their general comments. There's no salt marsh that we're crossing on this one, which is kind of unique. We're jumping
Yeah.
off a revetment right out over the water, so it's pretty safe. But they did mention that it's now winter flounder, so they've got some timing on that. And then the grounded floats, they were worried about, if they thought if we can't quite get the 2.5 feet, we should put float stops in. And then they did request any barge in there to be restricted to 2 hours before and after high tide to prevent barge grounding. I think that's kind of a standard condition.
Okay, so all the normal stuff. But you do have 2.5 feet at the front, don't you? Or is it
We
less?
have over 3 depending on the front or the back, but yes, we just have it on both
Okay.
sides. Yeah.
That's fine.
Can I ask a question?
mm-hmm.
You may have already answered this, Dan, I apologize, but, so the fixed pier is 101.5. And then you have 26 feet of a ramp, and then the floats.
Correct.
A total of 31, total of 30 more feet.
Round figures, yeah.
Just curious, is there a way to shorten the ramp and keep the depth, or is the depth not enough to shorten the ramp?
That's correct.
Yeah.
It wouldn't reach 3 feet if you shortened it at all.
Yeah, the 131 is where we hit the 3.0, and then it'll be about 2.5 on the backside. So that's, the 131 is required. We did put the longest span that's practicable in there, so that, you know, in the wintertime, all that comes out except for the couple of piles out there. But any longer, a ramp is very unwieldy.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think, given the particular circumstance and site specifics, that, I mean, I'd rather see a slightly longer pier and have assurance that you're not going to get out, or when you go out to the channel, you're not gonna be scouring the bottom with your prop. So I think that makes sense that way. In terms of the boat, you know, we're not gonna be able to regulate the type of boat that's on that, so. You know, so I think this represents a fairly reasonable compromise. The pier itself is significantly shorter than the other two piers abutting, so I think it makes sense that we would, and it's reasonable that we would approve something like this, but anyhow. Brittany, any other comments from you?
No comments.
Anybody in the audience? Nobody here? Anybody on Zoom? Don't see any. Would somebody like to make a motion to approve the project with special conditions?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
3-2 carries, or passes, I should say.
By the skin of the teeth. Well, we certainly appreciate the very careful consideration, and I think that the environment will be well protected. I know it's always a compromise, but we'll make sure that that donation goes in and that tips the balance in the favor of the environment. Thank you.
Please email me that file if you would. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll give you this copy here. Well, I'll send the email. That's probably cleanest, yeah. And it did go to somebody's account on the town.
Donation, that doesn't go into the,
No, I don't.
okay.
Yeah, it's no quid pro quo. We know it's not required, and we're happy to do it.
Last two.
I do not
I mean,
Kelly and Pat do not sign, Paul does.
That we need 4 people to sign.
Don't sign it.
Oh.
We need one of
actually,
you to please
will
sign
one of
that.
You sign the said document.
We need the,
It doesn't mean that you're agreeing.
does
you're
not
just-
mean you voted yes. We just need the majority
Quorum.
of the standing members in the commission to sign an approved plan. Thank you,
And we're adjourning now.
Mr. Bishop.
Hey.
You don't want to do any stormwater
But I
tonight?
guess I have to, huh?
We never,
No, I'm just saying, let the record reflect that
Commissioner
our
Bishop.
wayward Commissioner Bishop has joined the.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Time is it?
Did our friend from Beechwood contact you, Dan?
Yes, yeah, I did get an email.
Well, have fun with that one. All right. Good afternoon, Mr. Bishop.
Good afternoon, Chairman Hoops.
You have arrived just in time for the stormwater management.
Excellent.
So, let's see here. Our next order is, order of business is a continued stormwater management permit application for SW 2023-002 JM O'Reilly Associates and Christian Davenport Companies Incorporated, Lot 2A, Route 6A, proposed development of a 14-lot cluster subdivision in Yarmouthport. We have a request from the engineer. Our office requesting continuance to the next scheduled hearing on August 17th. Hope to submit revised materials for review prior to then. Good luck. Do I have a motion to continue to August 17th?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Oops, yeah, 6.
And another stormwater management permit application for SW 2023-004, Tiffany Bray, HFA AE, for Michael Gazdaco, Colby Enterprises LLC, 473, 479, and 487 Station Avenue, proposed 3,600 square foot season corner market basement, a 3,648 square foot overhead canopy with fuel dispensing tanks, associated utility, grading, stormwater, landscaping, and curbing improvements. Brittany, we have everything is in order. The peer review has been
Complete and in
Complete.
compliance.
Everybody's okey-dokey, thumbs up. All right, so do I have a motion to issue the stormwater management permit application?
Can I just ask a question before
Yeah.
we continue? In reading about this, it said something about decommissioning other gas stations on that road. Do you know which ones that would be decommissioned?
I don't.
No?
I believe it's the Sunoco station at the corner of Old Town House.
Just one? They mentioned 2.
I only knew of one.
Maybe the Shell station. So in decommissioning, they talk about, I don't know if this relates to this question, but do they knock them down or just board them up?
Don't know the answer to your question.
No.
Well,
We
if
do.
they have to do something with the underground tanks, obviously.
And this it wouldn't have any bearing on the stormwater management
No.
at all?
No, because they'll pump, I mean, they would pump the tanks, but they can leave the underground tanks in the ground as long as they pump them.
We also do have the representative on Zoom and his hand is up.
What is the most important part of the stormwater management application to make sure they're doing the work properly so they don't flood Station Avenue? I mean,
They're responsible for containing all of their stormwater on site and providing infiltration. And that's what the 160 some odd page calculation report shows. They include all of those calculations and all of the requirements. They also included a SWIP that they had to submit for other permitting. So all of that is in the stormwater
so
management
the
permit
stormwater
application.
goes into the ground basically, right?
Yes, it has to be infiltrated.
It doesn't mess up the aquifer at all.
It's treated in the
It's treated.
stormwater management,
Filtered.
in the BMPs, yeah.
And because it's so close to, it's close to that bike trail, right?
It is.
There's no issue there in terms of runoff or anything like that, because that's pretty steep up.
I don't believe so.
And they have to contain it all on their
Point
property.
behind the
Yeah.
stormwater permit is that they have to keep everything
Okay.
on the lot.
Thank you for that, I appreciate it.
All right, did you say we had somebody,
Yeah, there's one person with their hand up.
I can't see who that is.
Rich?
Rich DeFusco?
Yes, hi, I'm Rich DeFusco from HFA. I worked on the plans from the stormwater, and there is a plan to remove the storage tanks from the other Shell station, and I believe they have an agreement with the Sunoco also to be able to put the new tanks into this property. Doesn't affect the stormwater at all, but I just thought I'd let you know.
Okay, so they're removing the tanks from the Shell station and Sunoco station.
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you for that clarification. All right, so there's the answer.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Would somebody like to make a motion to approve or issue the stormwater management permit application for SW 2023-004?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. All right, next order of business is approval of the meeting minutes for July 20th, 2023. Somebody read through those?
Yep, I did.
Paul, are they good?
Yeah, they seem to be. I just have one question. I'm sorry. On page 2, it had to do with 138 Kroll Road. Maybe this isn't something you do in the minutes, but I know there were people that got up and spoke about this briefly after it was decided that it would be tabled. Is that kind of contribution from the audience typically?
Because they were out of order.
They were out of order?
Yeah, they weren't recognized, so it doesn't enter into the public record then.
Okay. Well, why weren't they
Because I never recognized it. I tabled the item and he just started blurting out. but
Okay, all right.
He had no right to do that.
Okay, and just so I understand, so you have the authority to table an item without discussing it with the commission also? That's
Yeah,
part of what?
I'm not, it's not pooling anything, it's just, I'm just saying, we're gonna move this to another agenda so that it can be brought up under, in this case, it wasn't a full board, but it was.
Representative present.
Yeah, because we had
no representative.
no representative, and it was important enough that we needed the representative there.
Okay, all right, thank you. And everything else looks just fine.
Okay, so it's been moved, is there a second?
Second.
Who moved it, Paul?
Paul?
Can I vote on this, because I watched it on TV, or?
Sure, why not?
I don't know, I'm just asking.
This is yours.
Okay.
Those,
All right, sign this one.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
So
Carries
another
unanimously. Let's see, other business not reasonably anticipated.
I have no business.
You want to say something about the grant you got?
Do you have business?
Brittany, you want to say something about the grant you received?
You want to say something about the grant?
Sure. The CEDC Tourism Revenue Fund issued their public improvement grants, and one of them was rewarded to the Conservation Division for the management of phragmites on town-owned parcels. Some of them are continued management from previous years, and some of them are new. And we were awarded $30,000.
Wow,
Oh, awesome.
bravo.
And this is for stuff that's already been earmarked, right? The money is for projects that have already,
Yeah, so it has to be specifically for that project that we use the money.
okay.
And in the application, we will be continuing to manage the phragmites at the Meadowbrook Preserve, in addition to a new small area at Taylor Bray Farm, and a new area completely at Run Pond in 2 different sites.
Very good.
Can I just offer something?
Yes.
I was at the Tidmarsh Project tour on Friday, and I met an individual from Mass Audubon, and he claims he has some new techniques that are looking very favorable for
For
managing
Phragmites
frags.
management?
Yeah.
That'd be very interesting.
What's that?
Don't ask me his name. Embarrass me, Ed.
I think he did ask you this thing.
Yeah, I did.
I think I did.
I can't recall his name. I have it in my notes.
Well.
You'll share it with Brittany, then.
I will, of course.
Yeah, we're hoping in conjunction with hopes of future projects at Smuggler's Beach that the opening of hopefully increasing tidal flushing in that area will help. Smugglers.
Bass River, it's
Yeah.
called Bass River Beach now.
No, Bass River was the old name. It's Smugglers now.
Oh, it's Smugglers
Oh, it
now?
is?
It always was Smugglers.
But with initial Phragmites treatment and then hopefully increase of tidal flushing would increase the salinity of the water and keep the Phragmites more at bay for the future.
Open up the culvert.
Across the street?
Add another one. Yeah, there's a small one there. I think the
And we're still looking
intention is
into
to add one.
determining if
Be a
the
stream
pipe
that
is
runs
actually functioning
Beneath the
and
parking lot there.
There's a new camera.
Run.
Doesn't go far enough,
And they
but
put
it can
parking
go
lot in, they just
some
put
Halfway?
distance.
said,
Does it
I'm
meet
not sure.
halfway?
She said it also has to be
You got
above,
most of the halfway, so
has to be above the water. So if there's water in the pipe during low tide, then she won't be able to look. But I think,
it has to be above water.
yeah.
Okay, the only other thing I would ask is that, could we, again, just check on the status of hiring a new commissioner and,
We're not hiring, we're naming.
Hiring, what's
What's paid now?
What's the salary?
yeah, you get paid nothing.
I will check the status. Maybe we can do some publicity, advertising. Anyone that is listening, we are interested in a new commissioner.
after
Apply.
the Yarmouth
Fill out the interest
residents.
form.
Other than that, anybody else?
Yeah, I have one other question. There was a letter on, Brittany sent along from Michelle Hunton.
Yes.
Is that going to be discussed at the next meeting or something, or what?
I did not put it as an agenda item because it came in late. So we received a letter from 33 Prince Street. They had received enforcement from us to remove an oversized float over a year ago. They will be, instead of removing it, they have decided to pursue permitting in the form of an RDA, which Kelly had suggested at the time of the certificate of compliance denial in January of 2022. So we would honor that only an RDA would be needed instead of an NOI to propose permitting of a 200 square foot floating dock. But they are not going to remove the 240 square foot dock prior to then.
Now, there's a long letter from their lawyer with all the reasons why. Has that gone to our town council to see whether what he says is,
No, I have not sent it along.
I'm sorry, what?
I haven't sent it to town council.
Should we or no? I'm just,
I don't think that 1 month it will take for them to file the RDA is worth, we can either send them a fine for not following through with our requirement to remove the oversized float, but they are pursuing permitting.
so in the end, if we approve their permitting, they then have a float within compliance.
Within compliance, the 200 square feet.
It would meet all of the guidelines, so.
Because I have to say, it's a letter goes a little bit beyond my ability to understand all the legal references and so on, so I was just wondering what the status is.
I would say the gist of the letter, not to abbreviate, but it's been in there for so long that they're saying that the 200 square foot limit would not apply to them.
I figured that
But
out.
then at the end, they do offer to permit a new float at 200 square feet.
Yeah.
I think they're just trying to get through the summer with their 240 square foot float.
Yep.
And I
then
don't
take it
think that is definitely, they've been stringing along, but I don't think it's worth doing further enforcement unless it's a small fine.
So then they say, and maybe, I think it talks about it there, so for the above reasons, we request that the commission allow the float to remain until it has heard and made a determination on the forthcoming.
Yeah,
NOI.
we
That's
required
okay?
them to have it removed by today, and they have let us know that they're not going to remove it. Sorry, could you hear me?
So they want it to stay there until they go through the NOI, right?
They do.
So we've asked them to take it out, right?
We have.
And they said no, so is there any recourse this commission has in terms of
We can give them a fine.
We can find them.
fine them, regardless of what they kind of push at us here, right?
We can, if we choose to find them, they can choose to pay it, they can choose to take us to court and fight the fine. And that's what the lawyer is saying, that they would fight it because they don't think we have grounds to enforce on the issue.
That's why I asked my question, to see whether we do have grounds.
And I'm happy to send it along to him. I just have not yet.
No, I mean, if you think that, I mean, it seems that the owner wants to get through the summer without
Yeah,
changing.
yeah, sure.
And if you think that it's a waste of time, because within a month, we're gonna get this new proposal, I'm willing to wait until we get the new proposal. If we don't get it, then we should act.
Mm-hmm.
And they said the month, right? They're the ones who put the month on.
He said 1 month, yeah. I will hold them to that month.
So
the end
September
of the
3rd,
summer.
we should get something.
It is the end of the summer, yeah.
It's an RDA. I mean, it should take
It should take
should
10
take them
minutes.
half an hour to do this. So I would expect them to do that. That they have that in there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else?
No.
Would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
There is a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We stand adjourned at 6:55 PM.